Hey everyone, it's Christina, otherwise known as CM Bowling on Twitter, or used to be because I have finally been permanently banned. So just keep waiting for Elon Musk to release me from my prison. But yeah, so I decided it was time for a little update. It has been some time since I first posted my video on YouTube about what I had gone through with the thing that shall not be named, we will say. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about how things have changed for me. And since I'm approaching a year, give a little update as to how I'm doing health wise and where the progression of illness started to subside and I started to see some recovery. So just thought I'd give that update and let's get into it. Back in December 15th of 2021, I got my COVID booster, Pfizer, and within 24 hours got extremely sick. I first developed a very, very sore arm. It actually felt like there was a bullet in my arm. It was that sore I couldn't lift it. I couldn't even move it. I just didn't have any trouble walking at that point. I remember walking from the house I was staying in over to my parents' house and complaining that my arm was not even usable, and I had been making Christmas cookies, so I was upset that I couldn't make cookies that day. I ended up just having that arm pain for about 24 to 48 hours. I don't fully remember how long it was, but it did subside pretty quickly. But what happened was that pain started to move from that upper part of my arm and into my chest. And I could feel it was almost like an inflammation feeling spreading over to my chest. And then it started to move down into my breast, my left breast, and then into the armpit area, where I did develop a little bit of swollen lymph nodes, not as bad as some people report having. They'll have people talk about having like golf ball sized lymph nodes. I didn't have that. I did have just very swollen lymph nodes, and that whole area felt like it was a very soft or very sensitive, to the touch. So I couldn't really put my hand here in because it was too painful, and then I couldn't put my hand here at all because that was way too painful, and my breast hurt as well. So that was about 24 hours post-vaccine. I started getting a fever, actually, at that point as well. 101.5, I think it was. It wasn't super high, and it was brief. It was like 12 hours, and it was expected. At that point, I really was not concerned. I figured this is normal for the vaccine. This is similar to what I had experienced from the previous two, because this was my third at this point. So, starting, however, on day 3, that's when things began to get a little worrisome, because I noticed that I was now having chest pain. So that pain that had started in my arm and had moved into my breast and then my armpit was now spreading into my chest. It was like it was all moving this way. So I ended up going to the emergency room that day because I was very concerned that there was actually something going on. I had a friend who was diagnosed with pericarditis post-booster, and she encouraged me to at least go in, get it checked out, make sure that nothing was happening, and I maybe I just needed to take some NSAIDs for the inflammation, and that would take care of it. So I did go into the emergency room that day. I was in St. Augustine, Florida at the time. They agreed that it was worrisome, but it looked like it was a muscular pain, especially since when I pressed on it, it hurt. So there was obviously some inflammation, and they figured it's just affecting the muscles in that area. And since everything else was so sore, it wasn't abnormal for it to be in that chest area. So just give it some more time, maybe take some anti-inflammatories. So I did that. But I did not take quite enough for what I ended up being diagnosed with. So fast forward, because I do have another video where I cover the details of everything that happened, but I did end up going to the emergency room a total of, I believe, 11 times in 3 months. I had 3 CT scans, 1 of my abdomen and 2 of my chest, I want to say. Yep, 2 of my chest, because they were looking for pulmonary embolism. And I had echoes, 2 of them, I believe. I had 2 cardiac, maybe 3 cardiac monitors. 1 was for a really long time, and then there was 2 for 24 hours. I had so many tests. I had a VQ scan where you inhale radioactive material and they scan your lungs with one of those cool machines that whirls around you. That was also looking for pulmonary embolism. And most of those tests actually came back normal, which doctors thought I should be totally relieved by. But at that point, when I was going through that, I was so disabled. Every normal test was incredibly frustrating because I could not get out of bed. I couldn't make it during the worst times of this illness. I could not get from my bed to the bathroom without assistance. My mom and my fiance had to support me on either side to help me get to the bathroom. I would use the bathroom and then they would help me get back. And taking showers, I would lay on the floor and let the water just kind of wash over me because I was unable to stand. I eventually did get a shower chair, which was amazing, actually. I highly recommend that to anyone who is in my situation. And had some weird other things happen. I have a full list somewhere that I can put down in the description, I guess. But I ended up with a rash on my arm for a day. So eventually decided it might be a histamine response. I was officially diagnosed with pericarditis, which is inflammation of the sac surrounding the heart, the pericardium. I was not diagnosed with myocarditis, but I was told that I had a suspected case of myocarditis despite having normal troponin levels. The troponin, I got tested like 8 times for troponin, and I never had any elevated levels. But troponin is the indication in your blood. There's a marker in your blood that they look for that when they see elevated levels of troponin, it means that cardiac tissue is being damaged. So I did not have that, but I did have signs of pericarditis, including a consistently abnormal EKG. And so because of the EKG, it was also suspected I might actually have myopericarditis, and because of the level of disability that I was experiencing. So I first started with metoprolol and ended up going to propranolol, and that was at my request because I believed at that point that I was having POTS symptoms, which were confirmed via tilt table test. They did a test where they strapped me to a table and then hold me up and watch what happens to my blood pressure and heart rate, and I did test positive for POTS. So that would explain why I was having so much trouble with standing. And I was also taking colchicine, which is actually a gout medication. A lot of people point that out when I tell them I was on colchicine, and they're like, well, so you had gout? No, I did not have gout. I had inflammation. It's actually a very strong anti-inflammatory, often prescribed for cardiac inflammation. So if you have myocarditis or pericarditis, you will be prescribed colchicine, and I feel like that was very, very instrumental in my getting better. So I have said a few times I am recovering. I am not fully recovered at this point, but I would consider myself to be about 90%, 90-95%. The only limitations that I have right now are with carrying heavy things. Anything over like 10 or 20 pounds I would struggle with, and walking longer distances. So at this point I am able to go for a walk around the block, especially on a good day. On a good day I can probably walk for a mile. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm slowly working up to it. I think the key has been so far just not pushing myself at all, making sure that I'm going easy and taking my time with things and not overdoing it. So overdoing it is definitely something that has set me back in the past. For a while I was actually down in bed again because I overdid it when my parents brought me camping to try to cheer me up in Florida. And I knelt to get out of the tent, and I knelt for too long, struggling with the zipper of the tent, and ended up feeling the inflammation just come right up through my heart again. I was able to set a limit at that point and decide where the line was and what I was willing to do and push my body through. So now I go to the gym every day. I usually do weights. I'm not focusing on cardio yet. I'm not ready for that. I will do a bike for like 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, and at a very low speed. I don't go fast. So I'm doing a lot of weight machines, exercising my legs at about 10 to 20 pounds, depending on what part of my body that it's exercising. I do some arm exercises, but I try to avoid them because when I do, I get that chest pain again, and I really don't like feeling that. So anything that is bringing on pain, I'm figuring is my body telling me, please stop doing that. That is too much. So if it doesn't bring on pain, I figure I'm good to go. It's not harmful, and it seems to be something that is making me feel better. And if it's an exercise that I am getting pain afterwards, I decide, okay, well, that was too much, and I need to go back and do something that is either less duration or less strenuous for my body. So I started a low histamine diet when I was in Florida, probably about in March, I want to say. I think it was March or February. And I started a very strict low histamine diet where I was basically only eating chicken, rice, and some vegetables and apples. I lost a bunch of weight because of that, and also because I was on bed rest, losing muscle mass, and I wasn't eating enough. I just didn't have an appetite and really wasn't doing well. I'm sure there are people out there who know who I am and have met me before and know that I'm not exactly a small person, that I usually have a pretty hearty appetite and I like to eat. I usually have a pretty hearty appetite. I'm somebody who loves food. I am quite tall. I'm about 5'11", almost 6 feet. So when I lose weight, I lose it pretty quickly because I usually have to eat a lot of calories to maintain the weight I'm at. And right now I'm probably bordering on overweight again, but I started at overweight. I started actually at like 200 and I think it was like 220, 230 pounds when I got sick. And the lowest I saw the scale go was about 175. So I lost quite a bit of weight from this. I don't know what I weigh now. So I'm not really concerned about it. I'm more concerned with getting healthy and getting fit now. So I want to focus more on just helping my body recover, eating foods that are nutritious and that don't bother me. I still feel like I get a little bit triggered from tomatoes. For some reason, that's always been the big trigger for me. That was when I first discovered that the low histamine diet might help, because I tried it, thought, oh gosh, I'm not getting better, it's obviously not helping, and then had pizza, which had a ton of tomato sauce on it, and immediately within about, I want to say like 20 to 30 minutes, experienced severe tinnitus and started getting severe chest pain. So discovered that histamine was definitely a huge part of this. The real turning point for me, I think, was when I started Zyrtec. But I was scared at that point because I had already had side effects now from 2 different medications, one being the vaccine and the other being the Claritin. I eventually talked to a bunch of doctors and they all told me to try Zyrtec. It took me forever to try Zyrtec. I was terrified. I honestly sat there and stared at a bottle of Zyrtec for like 2 weeks. It just felt so horrible and I gave up and I was like, no, I need to try this. And also had a physical therapist at the time who was wonderful and very, very sweet and very understanding. And she was like, I understand that you are completely traumatized by this experience, but you need to try something. So I did take the Zyrtec, and that's cetrazine for those who are not in the United States. And that ended up being the ticket, like the thing that fixed so much of what I was experiencing. Some of the chest pain that I experienced all the time went away within 12 hours of starting the Zyrtec, completely gone. I was suddenly able to walk again, not for long distances, just get up and walk around the house. I was able to breathe better. I was having less heart palpitations. So there was very, very clearly some kind of histamine response going on with this. When I started taking the Zyrtec, I stopped experiencing the severity of symptoms that I was experiencing. I was still experiencing those symptoms, but they were less severe and they had less duration. So I would recover much faster once I had gotten up and sat back down again. I also started taking low-dose naltrexone, otherwise known as LDN. It is a very mild immune modulator that some people recommended, and I did not really have much success with that. If anything, I just had trouble sleeping. At first I thought it was helping, and then it just seemed to not. It reached a point where I didn't feel like I was getting any benefit out of it, and I didn't want to continue taking all these medications that I might not actually need. So I stopped taking that and just stuck with the Zyrtec. At that point, I was taking Zyrtec, colchicine, propranolol, and famotidine, I want to say, every day. So, and I think I was still taking magnesium at that time. So I ended up going to, I tried actually taking the Zyrtec twice a day. That caused heart palpitations, and they actually had to put me on a heart monitor twice for that to figure out what was causing those palpitations. I figured it was the Zyrtec, and I believe it was, because I went back down to once a day and I no longer had that problem. In July of 2022, so this is about 8 months, I want to say, after my reaction, my fiance and I decided to move back to Washington. We are actually, we were living in Western Washington and the Pacific Northwest for some time before I got sick, and we had gone down to visit my parents just briefly for Christmas. And then we're planning to hit the road in our new van, which I'm now sitting in. You can kind of see the background, our half-built van back here that we've kind of covered up with our fancy Christmas lights. So, and yes, it's Christmas in November, and I'm allowed to have that because I really did not get a Christmas last year. So we decided to hit the road, and we took actually a nice trip. We went up to Maine and then crossed the country slowly. The key for this, I'm next to a road, I don't know if anyone can hear. The key to being able to travel was making sure that I wasn't doing anything. I was pretty much along for the ride. I drove quite a bit because at that point I was able to drive, but I could only drive for about 2 to 3 hour increments, so we only moved for 2 to 3 hours at a time. We took a lot of breaks. We rested a lot. I took a lot of naps. I made sure to stop as often as humanly possible and give myself some time to recuperate after each drive. That way we can make it all the way across the country like we had intended to. So we left Florida in July of 2022, and then we ended up in Washington. We arrived in September of 2022. So we had a 2-month trip where we visited some friends, went to a wedding. I miraculously did not get COVID from that wedding. I was so paranoid, but we were okay. And then we ended up going to the Minnesota State Fair and had so much fun there. I got pushed around in a wheelchair, and it was actually at that point that I started experimenting more with food, which of course you have to. You know, you're at the fair, and I love food, and I love getting to try the different things there. So it was at that point that I realized I was no longer reacting as strongly to food, and there were some foods that were completely safe. I did try a little bit of tomato, and it backfired, so there was obviously still some foods that were not safe as well. So figuring out which ones were safe and which ones weren't was still kind of a task, but the Zyrtec really seemed to be controlling these symptoms. So now we are in November, so we are actually almost at exactly 11 months for me since my reaction. Next month will be 1 year. I am at the point now where, like I said before, I can walk, not very far. I am still somewhat limited in how much I can do in a day. I really start to feel it after about halfway through the day. If I've been pretty active, I start to feel like I'm overdoing it and I need to rest for a bit. But I'm also now rapid cycling, where before if I was overwhelmed and just kind of done for the day, I was done for the day. Like I couldn't get up anymore. That was it. I needed to go to sleep for 8 hours and then wake up and I would have energy again. Now I need about an hour or two of laying down. I'm back up and I'm fine all over again. I'm able to move around. I'm able to do stuff. Most of what I do right now is very desk-centric, so I'm working on a book actually, not pertaining to the vaccine. It's something else entirely, and it's a fiction book I've been working on for years, but that was one of the key reasons that I also stepped back from social media, so I could work on the novel that I've been writing, and then also been focusing on advancing my own personal career, because that's something that I've been kind of putting on the back burner while we were planning for the van, and just have been trying to get my life back in order, I guess. You know, we obviously have a ton of debt. We're in so much debt right now, and we are in a position where we're both going to be working, and hopefully one day that book gets written and I become a multimillionaire. The next J.K. Rowling. Probably not, but that's fine. And yeah, so that's been the last year, I guess, in a very 20-minute summary, I think it was, which will probably be cut down to 5 minutes once I cut out all the ums. I say a lot, I found out doing these videos. I also feel really weird talking to a camera in the middle of the road. And in terms of, you know, advocacy, I've been trying really hard to continue to be involved. It's something that I would love to continue to do. It's very, very difficult, honestly, on a personal level, to continue to expose myself to that world. I feel like I needed to take a step back for a bit and just recover myself, because I can't help other people if I'm also struggling. So that's been something that I've been trying to focus on, getting healthy, eating right, making sure that I'm feeding my body and, you know, mentally, physically, everything, making sure that I'm doing well, and then I can help others who are going through the same thing. If you are watching this and you're going through what I've described, or you're in the thick of it, please understand, and I mean this wholeheartedly, it gets better. It really does. I was convinced that I was never going to recover. The recovery was so slow, and it was horrible. And I know a lot of you are further than a year out, and you're still sick, and you're still recovering. One of the things that I didn't talk about too much last time is I have worked in veterinary care in the medical field, but for dogs, for the past 5 or so years, and part of that was working with dogs who had injured spines. So a lot of that was just waiting for the nerves to heal. Autoimmune diseases, they come and go. They're frustrating. That is the nature of them. That is the nature of chronic illness. It is very frustrating, but you are going to recover. It is going to happen. Nerves can take 5, 10, 15 years to heal. Just because you are sick now does not mean you will be sick in 5 years, and it does not mean you will be sick in 10 years. There is hope. Absolutely. I believe that wholeheartedly now. And I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know what this has done to my body long term. I don't know if I'll get cancer tomorrow, but for right now, I can't control that. None of us can. None of us can predict the future. The important thing is remembering that even if you are further out, even if it's been 2 years and you still have that tingling neuropathy in your feet, nerves, like I said, the autonomic nervous system is one big nerve, right? It's your vagus nerve. It's just a very, very large nerve. The system, it's all made up of a bundle of nerves. Those can take a very, very, very long time to heal. That is Neurology 101. Sometimes they don't. It is true that some people with nerve damage will never get better, but that doesn't mean that person is you. Neurological damage can take forever to heal. It is frustrating and it is terrifying, and it could be incredibly painful, but I'm just asking that those people who are going through that stick it out with us, because you do have a ton of support. You have a ton of people who are vying for you, who are fighting for you. React 19, fantastic organization. I know they get a lot of flack because people think that they're run by a bunch of anti-vaxxers. Couldn't be further from the truth. Bree is amazing. I don't know how many of you have interacted with her, but Bree Dressen is the one who started React 19. She is phenomenal. She is a wonderful person. She is fighting hard for everybody who has gone through this. So please make sure that you stay here with us while we go and make things right for all of us who went through this. And I just wanted to put that out there, give everyone that update, make sure that, those of you who are still suffering know that you're not alone, and that you have a lot of people fighting for you behind the scenes. Even if it seems like you're alone, even if you don't feel like people are paying attention, trust me, there are a whole heck of a lot of people that you don't know who are fighting hard for your health, for you to get better. So anyway, that's all. And yeah, anyone in the Pacific Northwest, hit me up. Maybe we'll meet up and say hi. But other than that, I will probably give an update in another year or so, because honestly, I'm terrible at social media. I'm really not great. But I'm just doing okay, and I wanted to give everyone that announcement. And I think at some point I'll do a van tour, because my van is pretty cool, even though there is a lot of insulation exposure, because we are not done. It's fine though. It is fine. So, all right. Bye everyone.